Hey, this is Chris Goff, and in this trade video, we're going to be talking about how to structure multiple offers with the seller, and then how do we go in partnership with another investor. You may have one investor that doesn't have the funds or the financing to do the deal, or you have another investor that has the funds, but they simply don't have time. We're going to package it all together in this one video, so stay tuned.
Welcome to REI Pro Talk, where real estate investors turn for the latest news, tips, and tricks from the real in the trenches pros. Tune in to hear Chris Goff, the nation's premier real estate investing powerhouse. Join up with other top pros in the investing world as they cover every topic. No fluff, no filler, no holds barred. All you need to know from start to paycheck.
Do you have any information or resources you could share on how to structure deals? Another investor has a property they found, but they don't have the time to spend on the rehab. I have the time to do it, but I don't know how to structure it. Hey, this is a great question. Actually, let's run through a scenario and really show you how do we structure these deals. Okay, so number one, without really understanding all the pieces to the puzzle about the property, is it vacant? Does it need, how much of repairs? What is the owner's motivation? Are they willing to take payments? These are things that I try to get out of a phone call. I try to understand these things, and that's what we call pre-qualifying the seller. Is this worth my time to go look at? You may not have all those answers on the phone call, but we really need to feel that vibe of what's going on. So the very first thing, let's just go to a property. Now, when we save a property, I want everybody to understand that, let's just pick one here in Texas. I want everybody to understand our property section is, these are the properties that I'm working somehow from an individual point of view. Not necessarily I put this property in a bulk campaign, I've sent some mailers, did some bulk skip tracing. When I find out that it looks like a potential deal I want to work, that's what this section is really all about. Now, obviously you could use this section for anything you want, but we got to start here. So we found this property, we'll just say, and up at the very top, the menu tools here. Now, just keep in mind, this whole section, this is the section we're completely making so much better. So much better. Okay, so just bear with me in this particular video until we get that released. The very first thing I want to do is actually pull some comps. I need to understand, okay, what is that, value? What is that ARV? Now, we do give you an estimated value, but that's kind of taking an estimate. We need to see real-time sales because having the MLS sold data usually updates twice a day. We update our estimated value every 30 days. So just keep that in mind. And, some areas could change pretty quickly. And you really need to know that definite ARV. And that's where I always say run comps, right? So I'm going to go to the comp section, just pull this up. And the very first thing that I want to do is go through what homes have sold that are similar. Okay. The very first thing I feel is the most important thing is the square footage. So if this particular property is 2802 square foot, I'm just scrolling down the list to see, okay, what properties are even close to that 2,800 square foot home. Some cases you're going to find that maybe there's not. Maybe this is the outlier property in that area. But without really getting into detail about comps, obviously we have tons of videos on how to structure deals and comps and so forth. This is going to be the first thing that I want to do when I've looked at the property, I've inspected the property. Now, how do we actually structure the deal and how do we get it? And how many different ways can we get this particular deal? So you definitely want to run through the comps. The very first next thing after I run comps, because I've done all these other steps, number one is to go to step 4, which is going to be our offers. Okay. If you, and I fill them all out. Again, There are going to be specific situations where if the property is not livable, I want you to remember this. If the property is not livable, you're not doing a lease option because you're going to have to put money into that property in order to make it livable, or the owner's going to have to do that prior to doing the deal. In general, we don't like to put money into a property that you don't own. And I hope that makes sense for a lot of people. So the general concept of a lease option is generally a home in good condition that's livable. Generally, it's in a good area because you're going to need your buyer to qualify for that. We had a RIA owner ask, hey, I want to see all these different offer scenarios for a home that's worth $39,000. Well, you're never going to do a lease option on it because most banks won't even loan $39,000 for a house for a new homeowner to live in. It's too low, right? So understanding situations, understanding the property, understanding the repairs, things of that nature are really going to help us narrow down what potential strategies can we do. And that is huge for you to understand that, because you don't want to give an offer that doesn't make sense. You already know they're going to say no. So this particular property is actually located what we call C marketplace. It's kind of the middle of the road. And I always say you could do everything in that marketplace. So if you're a wholesaler and or a rehabber, you're going to fill this one section out, which is the cash offer. If they are open to payments, I would much rather get a seller finance because I want to own the property. Now, I can only get the seller finance knowing that I still will need a little bit of money to put into the deal because I'm going to own it. You're going to have closing costs. You can have potential repair costs. You're going to have to pay the utilities until you do something with it. I have to understand that from the beginning. The only way you can make a seller finance work if you have $0 is structure the seller finance and then wholesale the seller finance deal to another investor. Then I'm going to go into our lease option offer, and I'm going to structure these deals. Now, if this is a seller that's just, hey, I'm motivated, I need to sell, I'm going to now make all three offers to the owner. What I like to do, and I'm just going to throw a number out here. Don't, say, well, that didn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. I'm just throwing a number because there's a point that I want to make. That's something I've learned over years now, is most sellers will always focus on price. What's the sales price? Okay. Your cash offer sales price should always be the lowest. The highest sales price offer will always be the lease option. And somewhere in between, I want you to set the seller finance offer, sales price. And that point makes a huge difference to the owner. I'm just telling you, because here's what's going to happen. The owner's going to get all three offers at the exact same time. And a lot of times I'll say something like, hey, I understand you didn't want to take payments on the house. I thought I would structure the offer just to show you on paper you could make a little bit more money if you're willing to go this way. And they start thinking about that because, again, they always come back to price. Okay. So if they see your three offers, are like, Chris, that I can't take your cash offer. That's way too low. That's, again, why I wanted to put together these other offers for you. With the seller finance, the owner is going to make interest on that property potentially. They're not going to have to worry about tenants, toilets, headaches, repairs, maintenance, insurance, taxes, because you own the house now. They just get a check every single month, and you're going to keep doing that for the duration of whatever you agree to do with the seller. Okay. Normally I'll amortize it over 30 years and I'll do a balloon payment. During that process, I'm going to do something with it. And that's where I would go to Deal Pro in REIPro and actually analyze what my exit strategy could be in this situation. And that gives you a really good idea of, if I acquire the property this way, here are my options on making money with it over here. Do I rent it out? Do I fix it up and resell it? Do I do a lease option? It's a personal thing when it comes to that. If this is a property you just want to rent out because you see the long-term benefit, the rent's good, the numbers work, then maybe you do that. If you need cash today, maybe you just fix it up and resell it. If you're like, hey, I could probably get a little bit more money if I went the lease option route as my exit strategy. And that's where Deal Pro is really going to help you analyze from the back end exit strategy point of view. Now, keep this in mind. I need to know all that before I even make the offers. I don't make the offer and go, okay, they took this offer. Now what? What am I going to do with this property? When I structure these offers, now it's up to the seller to pick one. I couldn't tell you how many times we present this multiple offer system and the seller gets so confused on which offer to take, they fail to realize they didn't have to take any of them. But you are giving them options. And when you give the seller options, they're more likely to take one. If you just shove down their throat, hey, I can only pay cash for this property. That's just the way it is. And this is the number it's going to be. It's easy to say no. And then you have to move on to the next deal. So here, all that work you did from finding the deal, marketing the deal, negotiating the deal, inspecting the property, you've just wasted all that time. And now you have to go move on to the next one. And a lot of people get frustrated with that and say, well, yeah, maybe this real estate thing is bad time and maybe it's just not for me. And I think you have to ask yourself, are you doing it the right way? This is where the multiple offer system will come into play. Now, keep in mind, not every seller is going to be open to more than one offer. Some sellers will say, hey, I have to have cash. That's it. That's their situation. And that's okay. But maybe if you structured a seller finance where you could cash them out in a short period of time, like 6 months, would you be willing to wait 6 months to give me enough time to come in and fix up the home and do something with from either a refinance or a sell point of view? And that's going to cash the owner out. Would they be willing to wait that duration? Or I may go to a seller and say, hey, could you seller finance this? Here, I'm willing to give you a bunch of money down because if I cash you out, especially people that have mortgages on the property, let's say they, have a mortgage on the property for 200 and they want to sell it for 250. Well, ultimately they're only going to get 50 grand out of that deal. How about if I just give you the 50 grand today and go seller finance route? Because I know if I could fix it up, I might be able to sell this for 300. Now, again, that would require some money, but it's a different avenue and a different tool in your toolbox when you hear people say, Chris, I have to have cash. It's cash or nothing type of thing. So, and I know I can't go through the individual aspect of it. Obviously, these are good things that I do in a coaching session, which we're going to be opening up coaching here next month. We're going to let everybody know this is a coaching program. You work directly with me, but these are the things that we go into depth on. These are the things that you really have to understand, right? Go through the videos right now, understand how to make these different offers and why you're making these offers to begin with, because you can't be an investor that they go one way, right? You have to be an investor that is open to other ways of doing things. And I think that's really going to help you. So I have money. You don't have money. You have the time. I don't, right? So how can we work together to actually do these deals together? This is very popular. There are several ways to do this. I'm going to give you a couple of my favorite ways to do this. Okay. Keep in mind, two people can agree on just about anything. Here's what I did or started to do years ago and still do it today. What I like to do is obviously, I'm going to meet somebody, an investor. It could be a friend, could be a family member. Be careful about the family member part, but I'm going to meet people that have money. Okay. And when I have people that have money, but they don't have time, I have the expertise over here to go find the deals, negotiate the deals, but I don't have any money. And I want to build this relationship with that person. The way I started doing this it was a 50-50 split. So the investor that has money is going to fund the deal. They're going to fund the rehab. They're going to fund everything. You're doing all the work, the negotiating, putting it under contract, purchasing it, rehabbing it, putting it on the market. You're doing all the legwork, the groundwork, the grunt work, all that stuff. When the sale happens, you split it 50-50. It's very simple. Well, I got tired of doing that. Like, as I got more experience, I was like, I feel like I'm doing, most of the work, but I started to make income. So as I started making income, then it put me in a better position to negotiate. Let's just say that. So then I moved to building those relationships where I would take private funds from an investor and say, hey, I'll pay 8-10% return on your money. Keep an example very simple. If I borrowed 100,000, you choose any number, 100,000 at 10% interest. If I did a 1-year term, I would owe that investor at the end of the year 110,000. My goal with that 100,000 is to acquire and make more money with it. Okay, so if I bought a house, fixed it up, sold it, I get a return, get a return, get a return. You can structure the interest payments however you and the investor see fit. Some investors want to get paid on a quarterly basis, just the interest payment. Some people will wait for a year, some will wait 5 years. And I want you to think about that for a second. If you can borrow the money from a private lender, okay, that has the money, don't have the time, they believe in you, you're going to do well. Some investors will start small. As the relationship gets better, they'll invest more money. And the great thing about working with private lenders, usually they know more people that have more money, because usually you hang out and around the people that make similar income as you. So they're going to introduce you to more people. You structure these deals in a way where eventually you start to have a lot of money in the pot. I like to do it from a 8% or 10% interest. Okay. If I take that money now, my goal is to make as much money as I can the fastest way I can within a year. If it's a one property kind of deal, the investor may want to get their money back sooner. Some investors will say, no, I'm willing to stick it out. Let's keep buying some more properties. It could get structured in a few different ways, but hopefully that will give you at least a couple of different ways that I like. Relationships will change. People will invest more money. One of my students, Bobby, he's got 13, 14 people now that have invested with him over the last year in different dollar amounts. And he's taking that money, that funding, and funding these deals, but it's also building up his net worth. It's also increasing his capital into these deals. Some of the properties he'll buy using private lending, he'll fix it up, and then he'll refinance it and use it as a long-term investment property. So that'll cash the investor out, but provides them with a long-term investment. You put a little bit of time, use somebody else's money. Obviously, yeah, they're going to want to get a little bit of money, but if you don't borrow the money because you don't want to pay them all that interest, then you wouldn't make the deal happen, right? So it takes both. I like it you may have to start off with a 50-50 split. Generally, some people will put this in an LLC per property, okay? Because obviously the investor that's funding the deal, they're going to be worried about what happens if you walk away, right? At least they have the collateral on the property. And that's the big thing. There's going to be protection for the investor, and that's going to be the property. But again, these are relationships that I want everybody to form out there. You find these people at your local meetup clubs. You'll find these at your REIA clubs. You'll find these people just getting out there and doing deals yourself. That's how you think about it. When I started wholesaling, that's how I found all the investors. That's right. These are the people that have money or access to money. You build a relationship with those people. Next thing you know, you're doing different deals together. And now they have faith, trust that you actually know what you're doing. And that's a great relationship to have. So yeah, the people that you need additional funding to get these deals done, absolutely. There's just a couple of different ways. Now, over time, as you get really good at this, you set your terms a little bit different. Maybe you don't always do a 50-50 split, but maybe for this one investor, maybe it's a 75-25 split. Maybe you go to a simple interest rate. So I think those will evolve when you start to get out there and meet with people, but don't get wrapped up into the person that's like, hey, I want all this money from you just to, even give it to you because I don't trust you. Well, if you don't trust me, let's not do business together. Right. And this works on your end too. Don't go do business with people you feel that there's something off, because the last thing you want to do is get a private lender, an investor that comes in, you borrow the money from them, and they become extremely shady and difficult to work with, because that's not going to help you either. And I know it's a big question mark. You never know until you do it. But I always say just go back to your gut feeling.
Thanks for listening to REI Pro Talk. If you've ever wanted to jump into the real estate game, get started with the #1 software for real estate investors on the planet, REI Pro. Start for free at www.myreipro.com.